Hello, it's Friday, it's midday, and it's time for Wow Ergonomics. Now, if you have a look up there, you
Yeah,
can see the new Backer
up there.
Elkhausen logo.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Which
And
I
I just,
can't remember. I can't remember if we said it on the show last week or whether we said it before. But it was like, I've got the wrong logo on, and I've had a slap on the wrist off marketing. So thank you, Mr. Coath, for correcting said logo across various platforms.
it's all right. So this is the correct Backer Elkhausen logo, much more slimline and stealthy
Yes.
than the previous one, which took up an enormous amount of.
This is more compact.
Yes. What someone's done is they've taken the Backer and the Elkhausen, and rather than being Backer Elkhausen in one long stream, it's now Backer over the top of Elkhausen. There you
Correct.
are. That
There we go.
£20,000 later, that's the logo they came up with, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't in your case. It is amazing though what people do spend on logos. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
millions.
Do you know that?
Millions.
Any examples of? Yeah. Well, the
I'll
big
tell
boys
you.
will, won't they? Because it's a massive rollout for the big boys, and you think of all, if you've got multiple hundreds of locations, it's a huge exercise to undertake something like that, isn't it? People think, oh, you just got to do this, but actually, it's everything that it's associated with.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a bit of a warm-up exercise, we'll bring in our special guest today,
Yeah.
Olivia, and we'll have a brief, before we find out exactly what it is that she does, we'll just have a little brief sort of warm-up with her about logos. Okay, so I'll bring her in now. Hello, Olivia.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So this is a bit of an icebreaker because we don't know you, you don't know us, etc. So
right.
Okay. So we're talking about logos. Before we get going on the deep and meaningful subjects, can you think of examples of any logos in recent times that have classic logos that have changed or have been changed?
There was one, but I can't actually think of what it was. But there was one. Was there one? No, I can think of one that hasn't changed in a long time.
Good. Go for that.
If that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I allowed to say brand names or not?
Yeah. We'll just say that any other versions of it are available.
So think about it. A massive pharmacy that's been around for a very long time and is widely available on your high streets.
Yes, that's true.
And you may wear it on your feet in the winter.
Yes, you would. Yes, you definitely would.
Yeah, there you go. Socks, that well-known pharmacy.
Yes. I go there all the time for all my pharmacy needs. I do.
Okay. If we're gonna play that,
I was thinking
that
of one that changed.
Yeah. Go on then.
Sorry, was another high street brand, and you used to go and get all your stationery and newspapers and books from them. You may still do.
Yeah.
And they might have two initials at the start and then followed by a very common surname.
Yeah,
that's
they've changed it quite recently, haven't they? I think there was quite a bit of pushback on that, wasn't there? Because I don't think a lot of people liked it.
No.
Yeah, people don't like tea.
Another one. Sorry. I was going to say another one that changed very recently that is on the high street is a bank that's a building society. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that one?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is it a city in northern Spain?
No.
Or have I got the wrong one? No,
they haven't changed because I know they definitely haven't.
They haven't changed.
They haven't.
No.
They haven't.
No.
Well, give us a clue then. I can't think who it is.
Well, it's kind of all over
everywhere.
The country. It's all over the country.
So it's like a nationwide sort of name.
Yeah, it's kind of that sort of name. Yeah.
No, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And that one's recently changed. That's become more simple. And no, the one big one that I was thinking of, which caused a bit of controversy last year, was pop till you pop and then you don't stop. That one. Yeah. They changed their logo. They'd had that logo with the guy with the moustache and everything.
Yeah,
really old-fashioned for years, and then they simplified it and they made it all
Yeah.
kind of trendy, and a lot of people went, really? Yeah. So there you
Well,
go.
I would still
Right.
eat them with no issues, no problem.
Do you know what? It's one of those things where at first people go, "Oh, do you know what? I'm not going to buy that anymore," because, and
No.
then they realise they love the food so much that they carry on buying it.
Exactly.
You know, it's. I think you have to change sometimes. You have to kind of upgrade, and you have to kind of modernise and whatever. It's when people. I tell you what it is. It's when people change the actual product. That's when it starts getting people. And a kind of a really good example of that is chocolates, isn't it? Over or sort of chocolate bars and whatever. We won't mention any names, but exactly that.
Shrinking in size.
I always thought it was because I was getting bigger. But then everybody else said it, So I thought, well, no, it can't be the case. It must be the case that they're actually shrinking.
Well, it's shrinkflation. It's shrinkflation.
It is.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Yeah. You were talking there about a product changing. One of the said not quite chocolate bar, but chocolate treat. I was discussing with a customer the other day, and we were discussing that how losing the nut version, whilst we understand why that needs to take place, has taken away something from said assorted chocolate treats.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Quite missed the peanut one in there as well, to be honest. So
well, the peanut ones are the best, really, in my opinion.
I think, and this is a great segue. What you've just done is allowed me a great segue into talking to Olivia, because I think one of the problems here is that as we've gone on in society, full stop, and I was actually listening to quite a good live on LinkedIn earlier this morning where they were talking about education, and they were talking about, the problem for schools it was talking about it from a school's perspective, that we're told all of the time we've got to standardize and, if you like, almost commoditize education in order to get the tick in the box that's needed for funding and everything else. And taking it back to the conversation that we all were having in London the other week about leadership and management or whatever, as you do that, what you do is you take the human out of it.
Yeah. Yes and no. Yes, I agree with you in what you're saying, Graham, and yes and no. I think standardization has to be there, but I think the human element must never be lost. I completely agree with you.
You understand what I'm saying? I'm saying? If you don't allow, within that standardization, then if you don't allow for something messy, which is people, you're probably going to fall short somewhere along the line.
We're not all the same, are we?
No, exactly. And that's where I bring it back to the chocolates, because years ago, we used to have those tins of chocolates. And do you know what? We suffered the ones that we didn't like.
Yeah,
and
it was part of the ritual, wasn't it? It was part of the pathway. You had to accept. You didn't like some of them, but some you had to go through them to get to the ones that you liked.
Absolutely. And too often these days, what we try and do is we try and please everybody, and instead, what we do is we make boxes of chocolates where you can now choose, and every single one of that box of chocolates is all the same. It's a great analogy.
No fun.
No. So
especially as someone who enjoyed the ones that no one else liked. That was always the great thing. Was you got to pick one as the tin went round the family, but then you also got to hoover up all the ones that were left as well. So it was sort of double bubble, wasn't it?
Lovely.
Oh yeah,
love that. And that's a great segue into Olivia talking about what she does. So Olivia, tell us a bit more about you.
Okay, so my name's Olivia, Olivia Turner. I am a nurse primarily. I'll always be a nurse, and actually a care assistant at heart, or care practitioner as we're now calling them, which is great. We're moving on with our language and how we address our healthcare professionals, health and social care professionals. So I'm a big fan of education. So that would be I'm just a big, enormous nerd. And I make no apologies for that. And I can't actually deny it anymore. You know, it's true.
It's okay. We love nerds on this program. It's fine.
As we say in Northern Ireland, up the nerds. you gotta, embrace what you like and what you enjoy. And I am so lucky in my career that I have had so many opportunities, incredible opportunities. And COVID, not going to spend a lot of time on that, because obviously it's time in our lives which we don't want to revisit. We're all still recovering. I know from a personal level, I'm still recovering from working in various COVID outbreaks and lots of different things. And, we as healthcare professionals, I just am about instilling confidence in nurses. So nurses and care assistants, I look after sort of care homes would be my speciality, nursing homes. And my background is sort of a 25-year history on and off of different bits and pieces, domiciliary care. I've worked in a regional support role for a couple of companies. Incredible experience, incredible managers and regional managers and all sorts of people to learn from, and incredible trainers as well. So I was lucky that I had great opportunities, and I just tried to soak it up like a sponge, if that makes sense. So what I try and do now is, I run an independent learning and development company. We also do bits and pieces of really support for primarily international nurses, but we also look after return to practice nurses who are sitting what we call the OSCE. And most people have never heard of OSCE. Even some nurses haven't even heard of OSCE. So it's a very niche area. So the nurses that I support and train, and I'm not saying I train anybody, because it's a partnership and it's a support network. So because of my background, I've worked with international nurses primarily, and internationally educated nurses working as care assistants, care practitioners, all sorts of different roles, who are then moving on to do their OSCE to become a UK registered nurse. So I've worked alongside nurses at all stages of the journey. So before arrival, interview. So I would do a lot of, interview coaching, because working in a care home is a different ballgame to a hospital. A lot of internationally educated nurses have never worked in a care home. They may have never even experienced a care home because it doesn't simply exist in their home country. Mm-hmm. So we need to have a lot of education in respective care homes. So I do a lot of support, and I prep our lovely nurses for their exam, which is a big deal. So these nurses, they are incredible, huge admiration, come over under very, very challenging circumstances a lot of the time. It takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of determination to make a big change in your life and move to the other side of the world, maybe to make a better life for your family. Or a return to practice nurse who hasn't worked as a nurse for 10 years is going to be nervous. They do the same exam. So I prep our nurses I don't really do like a boot camp style training, which is quite common for OSCE. And I'm not knocking that in any way, shape or form, because that works for some people. But like we were saying earlier, Graham, everyone is different. So my training is very much tailored to the individual, and because we're covering 21 different clinical skills, 21. Wow. Okay. And they could get 4 of any of those. And then we're also looking at different disease processes, the nursing process, plus research, evidence-based practice, plus professional values. So that's a lot, isn't it?
Well, you're wearing me out just saying it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I know it is exhausting. But I'm just trying to give a background because people don't know enough about OSCE. It has been talked about enough. And I'm very much about saying, well, here, listen, it's not easy. And yes, we all choose what we do in life. We all make our choices. But I'm all about, because of my experience with international nurses at all through the stages of the process, 2 years on, I've nurses that are still in touch with me, and they're deputy managers and they're clinical leads, and they're just amazing. So that's really me. I'm all about the care homes, and I'm all about giving good quality care via education.
It's brilliant. I know nothing about any of that, which is fantastic. Now, listen, we've got to start with Oski, which sounds like a Russian alcoholic drink, but it's obviously not. So, what does that actually break down into? What does that stand for? Something?
It does. So it's objective, structured clinical examination. So it isn't actually.
Right,
yeah, it's not strictly. It's like if you can imagine your driving test on steroids, okay, with a patient and a person watching you here in a little room, and it's being recorded, and you're in your nurse's uniform, and you are doing an injection to, obviously not to a real person, okay, a mannequin. You are doing a maybe a catheter removal on a mannequin. Obviously, it'll be a real patient for an assessment for obvious reasons. You have to treat that mannequin as if they are a real person. So I talk to all my mannequins, and because I'm so used to it, I do. But
so not only do you have to be a good nurse, you actually have to be a great actor as well.
Yes, actually, and I'm quite lucky because I do have. I learned, I was a moving and handling instructor before I started this training, and I went straight into a wonderful team, and I mean amazing. And one of the nurses who I used to work with, one of my colleagues, has come back to work with me again within my organization, and I am just delighted because she's wonderful and a brilliant trainer, and she's been an OSCE nurse, as we call them, she's an internationally educated nurse herself. She's been through the process. So this team I started with, they taught me, and I went in and I thought, how hard can this be? This is fine, sweet. And then honestly, my socks were blown off straight away. I was exhausted by lunchtime. It was so quick and fast, and because the nurses, these people are nurses already. My trainees, my learners on the whole are already qualified nurses. So I need to make sure that I'm tailoring it to them. So every nurse has a different experience. So I have care home experience, good broad knowledge. I might have a nurse who's come from and worked in a community outreach in Zimbabwe or somewhere, or a diabetic specialist nurse. So all these nurses, no nurse is created equal, and every nurse has their own unique skills, if that makes sense. So I'm lucky that I learned by watching other people teach in this way, and I've just adapted it to my own way as immigration has moved on, as the landscape have moved on. So there you go. I am so boring. I apologize, but it's it's something I'm very passionate about.
No, not boring at all. Stephen, we've got to ask here straight away, haven't we? Because as Olivia was talking, I was thinking, let me tell you this, Olivia. In the field of ergonomics, ergonomists are great at telling people how to do things and give advice. Quite often, they don't follow their own advice themselves. Right?
So, right. Familiar.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, for example, when I used to go out and carry out assessments, I would travel 80,000 miles a year driving the car. I'd carry heavy equipment. I'd probably have to take chairs to show people from time to time. I'd probably I'd get get somewhere and then find out the lift's broken. I've got to carry it up 5 flights of stairs on my own, on my back and whatever. I get there, they've got a bad back. I've now got a bad back. Everybody's got a bad back, etc., etc. So what I'd really like to know is, I mean, you mentioned moving and handling, which of course is an incredibly important part of keeping the person that's helping the patient fit and healthy. How many of those nurses get hands-on tuition around sort of ergonomics and stroke looking at different opportunities for avoiding issues, etc.?
Nurses are pretty adept at risk assessment, you know, and you know, most nurses would be quite comfortable with risk assessments. Not all nurses, but especially, you know, for example, like, you know, I've worked primarily in care homes, so I can really only speak from that experience, although I have done you know, some time in hospitals, but I was always really a care home nurse. But ergonomics in a care home are a nightmare. Sometimes if it's not purposefully built, okay? So if it's purposely built, then you have great space, wheelchair access, hoist access, all the rest of it. You've got decent flooring, you know, your lighting will be good. But you don't have that in every care home. You might have little care homes which are a converted house or a converted hotel. I've worked in a few of those, and you know, it just makes it that wee bit more challenging. But nurses, I think, will risk assess as they go around in their head. But I think that there's maybe more, you know, I think that it is pretty well covered in terms of your policies, procedures, and your risk assessments within those kind of environments. I think it's maybe we need to look as nurses a wee bit more at the detail, possibly.
Well, I was going to say that because what I see is that nurses or clinicians quite often they see it and they assess it and they live it when it comes to the bigger stuff. Right. So if someone's being moved from one bed to another or out of a chair and into this, or, you know, they need to use a hoist or whatever, all of that will be covered. Right. But then you go see them write notes on a patient on a laptop or whatever, and they're stood there for 20 odd minutes, bent over, using the laptop at the wrong height.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think within healthcare in general, we don't apply the rules to ourselves. So I mean, and I take ownership of that very much so. But I am learning to look after myself and put myself first, because ultimately I have the rest of my life to live, and I'd like to live that healthily. So I am, but as a caregiver of any description, you will automatically default yourself to last. So if you need to write notes and you've only got a tiny space in the cupboard to do it that's quiet, you're going there.
Yeah.
Because you need peace. And so nurses are so adaptable, and care staff and domestic staff and kitchen staff within those kind of environments are so adaptable. But I think sometimes to the detriment maybe of themselves, that they will say, oh, I don't have time to go and find somewhere that's going to be comfortable and good for my back, good for my position. You know, I won't take that break because I'm too busy. You know, it's all of those things that are burning our industry out ultimately. But I think that, you know, in terms of safety and ergonomics, I think probably we could look at it more, being honest, you know.
One thing I was going to say there was, one of the things Graham and I often talk about is the sort of more in the office, or the office type environment, is the necessity for people to take breaks. I probably know the answer to this already, but how difficult and big a challenge is it for nurses and care home staff to take those necessary breaks to look after themselves? Yeah.
Well,
Ouch.
It depends.
Yeah.
I have worked in, I've lost count. I've worked in probably upwards of 30 homes. I lost count at 30 in the last 4 years.
Wow.
So I worked in, at one point I was driving 500 miles a week. And you were talking about, Graham, moving equipment around and things. I mean, as a trainer, I do move equipment around, but I was lucky that I had, for the OSCE training, I just moved into a new permanent premises because I was doing primarily mobile training. Now the requirement isn't there for it anymore, but I would have moved, the equipment around. But I was lucky that I had a great training room. All my stuff was there, but I would have done a lot of training and a lot of different quality assurance and support and different things. So I was driving around lots of different places, in lots of different places, and was very lucky. And I do see it as lucky. I see it as a positive thing. And yes, it was very challenging for me, but I got to see how so many different places work, and amazing managers, amazing, like, everyone just really does pull together. It's for the greater good of the residents. But you will get some places, some organizations, but the organization will have their own policies and procedures, but then it depends on the premises, so which home, which place is it within that organization. So it's a top-down approach as far as I'm concerned. So I would, the nurses and any staff that come through my training, I always talk about well-being. It doesn't matter what the subject is, because nurses and care staff need to lead by example and support each other to take breaks, and all of that. But you find that most places, if the manager or the regional manager who is above, who's at the top, leading that company, that group, their attitude and how they look after themselves and support others to do so will have a huge impact, if that makes sense. But I think that, I still feel guilty taking a break. Okay. But that's on me. That's on me. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. So I always say to people, if you need a break, you're entitled to a break. Make sure you get it. Go and speak to your colleagues. Could you cover for me for 10 minutes? I'm wrecked. I need to go and get something to eat. Use your words, talk. That I think that sometimes people are scared to speak up, scared to rock the boat, scared to move against the culture. But if nothing changes, nothing changes ultimately. So I think there's a huge, I can't say one place is like this and one place is like that, because that's completely unfair, because everybody's trying to do their best under very difficult circumstances. But I think that well-being is a huge thing. It's massive, massive.
Stephen, I know you're trying to do more of it as an organisation, but this strikes me. How important is it that actually, as a manufacturer of solutions, you get to go and see what is happening at the coalface? Because I know you deal mainly with dealerships, etc. But you need to go in and see how people are working, what people are doing, what the problems are. There may not be simple solutions. There may not be commercial solutions in each of those situations. But sometimes, I just wonder whether that meeting doesn't happen. Do you know what I mean, Olivia? Actually, if you had someone there that's potentially could create different solutions for people, the detailed solutions, right, that looks at, someone's writing notes like this or whatever, and they could go, actually, we've got something, or we could adapt something that you could use, or every nurse could use, that would really help this. But I think they need to see it happen.
Yeah, I think, Graham, in an ideal world, that's great. But care homes, they're independent organisations, and there's not a lot of money to be, and not in Northern Ireland. People think, oh, care homes are raking it in. They're absolutely it's not the case. They don't. There's a huge disparity between the funding that is available, for hospitals and, acute settings and the trusts and everything. And yes, there's obviously, different rules and regulations, and if you've got an independent organization, it's different. But care homes are taking over that. They're assisting the hospitals to discharge patients ultimately, and we started that nice sort of team approach during COVID. The trusts and the hospitals got together, and it was lovely. And we are still continuing that. It's great because care homes do their job and hospitals do their job. Nobody does a more important job than the other one, if that makes sense. But independent care homes, there's not a lot of funding. And so for ergonomics and things like that, it's a great idea. It's lovely, but it needs to be really cost effective for them to be able to then go in and change maybe the way they've done something for 15 or 20 years. Does that make sense?
Oh no, it totally makes sense. I mean, it kind of brings us on to a quasi political issue, which is obviously in this country we've got a general election coming up, and certain parties are really kind of focusing in on the care sector, and the fact that
ours is on the same day, but we're voting for our local politicians. But yeah.
But clearly there's an emphasis on some carers need to be paid more, and actually we need to raise the way. But actually, just off your own opinion, and I'm not trying to push you on the politics of this particularly, but can the care sector actually absorb that? Can if people have got to pay the people that are caring more, can the infrastructure survive that?
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert, and I absolutely wouldn't profess to be. Obviously, I have a lot of experience within organizations, but I've never run a care home myself. So, I know a little bit about, all of that, but not enough to probably give you an informed enough opinion. But I do feel that absorption of the additional wages would be felt deeply within those organizations. I mean, that is a fact. I mean, most places would, they're maybe just managing to keep things balanced or doing a little, making a bit extra, or, I think there may be issues, but it depends on the home. The very independent standalone homes, I mean, they are really just, all hands on deck. There's no, I can't answer that question definitively for you. But there definitely needs to be more funding made available for care homes, in my opinion. And that's a long running issue. There's lots of people talking about that.
Because the interesting one, Graham, I know we've had people on, I think from the hospital side, haven't we, previously? I'm going back about 4 or 5 months, and I think I might have asked the question, and I think it's clearly there's a distinction here between the care homes and sort of the mainline health services. But I think did we not ask the question, is it a case of just throwing more money at it? And I think the answer was for that side of it, it wasn't necessarily that. Now it's very different to obviously the care home sector, but I think on the wider organisation, it's a lot bigger. There was a feeling that it might be a case of actually it was a bit more sort of systems and technology would sort of be more effective than necessarily just a blank checkbook. But that clearly is different to what you're talking about here, Olivia.
I think in care homes, technology is great, and I'm a big lover of technology. I do a lot of Zoom. I do a lot of my Zoom. Can I say Zoom? I've said it anyway. Oh, oops, sorry.
Too late.
There are other.
Exactly. There's other things are available, but it's a universal. It's a universal term now.
Yeah. Okay. So online meetings. So I use online meetings quite a lot, and I'm a big lover of technology. I've taught myself a lot of different things, and just try to be adaptable. Care homes need technology, in my opinion, and they need their. As far as I'm concerned, I think we should be moving away from paper-based, and most care homes are starting to do that now, but that comes at a cost. It saves a lot of time, but then if you've got a home, for example, that has nurses near retirement, they don't want to learn. No. And I can understand from their perspective. They find it stressful. They can't write their notes because they can't write them on a piece of paper, and they have to learn how to use a computer. Because we have nurses in care homes and on the wards working in their 70s. You know, I worked with the nurse in their late 70s. And I do believe that there is nurses in their 80s still working. So I'm not saying that the older generation are not computer literate, because they are a lot of the time. But I think that you've got the technology has to take time to embed then, you know, a new system, you know, everyone hates it for maybe 2 months and then it's great. But I think that those technologies would benefit care homes a great deal, but then it's don't over rely on them, because you lose that person-centeredness with that technology. So it's about allowing the person-centeredness within the technology. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Do look, both of you, I think half the problem is that we carry on looking at governments to try and sort all of this out anyway. Do we need to place more emphasis back on ourselves and or businesses to help us kind of be wise, money wise, and structure ourselves into what's going to happen to us when we get older? I just think that, you know, surely in the same way that, you know, some businesses do start talking to their employees because they value them about pensions. You know, there needs to be, people need to think about a contributional pot to where am I going to go? Who's going to look after me when I'm too old to work anymore? And when I need support, I think that we need to start thinking about that part of our life, because we're all, you know, getting older. Me particularly, but you know, we're all getting older, but we're not necessarily thinking about that end of our life, really.
Well, I do, you see, I do, because I've worked primarily with older adults. A lot of my career has been with, you know, 80 years plus, and I just think that generation are incredible, and we can learn a lot for them. But you can tell somebody who has looked after themselves versus somebody who hasn't. However, there are people who, through no fault of their own, you know, have illnesses, you know, and they're living with illness, and there is nothing they could have done about it. But on the whole, I think we should take ownership of our own health. There is a personal responsibility there, as far as I'm concerned, and I personally am trying to do that myself, because I can see the effect that might have when I'm older. So I do think that, you know, a lot of people, they say, oh, it's not my fault, but actually we do need to make sure that we eat well and we drink enough water and that we rest. You know, rest is a difficult thing to do. I find resting difficult because my brain's always on the go, and I'm always thinking about the next thing, and I love what I do and I just want to keep going. But we have to switch off, and rest and relaxation and exercise is very, very important. So I think there's a bit of I think throwing money at it probably isn't necessarily the way forward, but I think that we should all be aware of the fact that we are going to get older. It will happen to us, and we probably need to have a plan in place. I don't think it's a bad idea, personally.
No, it's not a bad idea at all. You know, I mean, the way I look at it, I've had 5 children. One of them's going to become famous and put me in a castle.
Well, I'm hoping,
or rich,
maybe not
famous or rich.
When, you know,
well, both.
A castle.
Yeah.
That sounds excellent.
Doesn't
excellent.
it?
I quite like to live in a castle.
Probably somewhere in Ireland, because you've probably got some beautiful castles there that I could buy.
We have some cracking castles, yeah. So definitely come here.
It's good enough for Bono. You know, it's good enough for me. really.
Your only
I mean,
problem there, Graham, is if you need a care assistant to come in and they've got to go up lots and lots of very steep winding stairs. That's not going to be good for their health, is
well,
it?
no,
So
I'll
you
just
need to think about
I'll
other
put
people
a
and all of
stair
this.
lift in. I'll put a lift in. It's fine.
You've got it sorted. You've got it sorted.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably take them all day to get to the top.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Oh. What's the biggest challenge for you then at the moment, Olivia, in your industry? What's the biggest hurdle to get over?
Oh gosh. Now that's a question. Uh, okay, so my experience is relatively unique. Just with my experience working with international nurses, not only preparing them and supporting them for OSCE, but also, the aftermath of that. I think in a lot of environments, it's difficult to, I'm trying to think of the term. It's difficult because a lot of places are running on agency, a lot of places are short-staffed, a lot of people are struggling, because they're trying to keep their home staffed. So a nurse comes in, and they're maybe introduced a wee bit too quickly, independently into that environment when they're not used to it. And that nurse clinically is probably very capable. However, they still need a little bit more support, something like a preceptorship for a few months. That is a big challenge that I can see. I can see nurses who are very stressed. They're maybe not taking ownership of the responsibility that they also have for their own professional development. So we have a huge big melting pot of things. And then obviously the immigration landscape is changing, has changed, will probably continue to change. And we also then have where it used to be 3 or 4 years ago, a nurse could come over and have pretty much any pick of their job, and the employer would take ownership of the training, the exam, and all of that. But now, the nurses I'm finding are coming in independently, and doing that independently. So I think that people are starting to take ownership, but I think it's difficult because they don't realize the level of preparation that is required for this exam. And then also after the exam, the exam to me is the starting point, not the finishing point, because that's 6 months, a year after you get your UK registration as a nurse. You need to get your head down and get yourself settled and take it day by day and not expect too much of yourself as a nurse, because it's a completely new environment. If I was to go to, for example, India and work, I would be expecting my colleagues to support me because it's a new environment. So for me, that's a big challenge. My professional observations in the last 3-4 years have seen nurses coming in with such varied experience. And then we now have nurses who have been in the country, in the UK, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England, for 2 years working as a care assistant or a care practitioner or a social care worker or whatever job they're doing. And they then have lost confidence in their nursing skills. They then go and try and do the exam and they don't pass. Now they have
Does that mean we're losing? Does that mean we're losing good people?
Potentially, yes. Potentially, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's scary.
And these nurses are incredibly experienced and wealth of leadership and management experience. Some near qualified, but they're so up to date and fresh and vibrant. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm just trying to do my bit in my little place in Bangor in Northern Ireland, and that's it. That's all I can do.
Well done you. Well done you.
Thank you.
So who if people are listening or watching, if they are nursing or whatever, who do you want to come and talk to you?
Okay, so because I have trained a lot of different areas, I primarily look after internationally educated and return to practice nurses. But I also do work with nurses who are already qualified, who would like some upskilling or some, they want some targeted training in some areas, or maybe there's been an incident that they want some training to talk through or reflect on. Care staff as well. So really anyone, but primarily internationally educated and return to practice nurses. And anyone wanting maybe some assistance with an interview for a care home, because I understand care homes, and I understand a nurse can answer a question for me based on their experience. But if I give them a good example, okay, imagine yourself in this scenario, they can then answer that question like that. But it's how you phrase it. So it's getting them that confidence, and it is confidence. Fake it till you make it. So any international nurses that are, oh no, absolutely, fake it till you make it.
By the way, Olivia's not meaning that they will fake the nursing.
No,
absolutely not.
No, I don't know. I just need to be clear. Nobody is faking nursing, please. No. Real qualified nurses, please. But no, it's very much about confidence, and we think, oh, nurses, oh, they're angels and they're superheroes and this and that and the other. We are human beings just like anybody else. All right. I'm not a robot. I wish it was some days, because I could get way more work done, but I'm not. Ultimately, I'm not. We're like, just wind me up at the back. Boop, boop, boop. Going. But it's like I'm not a robot, and neither are the care staff and the nurses that I work with. And it's about getting people to recognize that nurses need support just like everybody does, and we have put nurses on a pedestal the last lot of years, health and social care staff on a pedestal, and ultimately we are human. So really, I mean, I have lots of different people contacting me, and I'm happy to give advice to people as well. I don't necessarily, anyone who phones me, there's no obligation. It's very much phone me. If I can help you with some training or some support, I will. But if I can't, I will point you in the right direction. And that's ultimately what it is, because it's so difficult to find the right advice, especially for OSCE. OSCE is so difficult to find advice for. So that's it, really.
I love it. And we've learned something completely new today, which is part of the remit of the show. We try and stretch our own brains when it comes to anything to do with well-being, etc. Now, before you leave, Olivia, and thank you so much for joining us today. You mentioned support. We obviously want to support you in delivering whatever you deliver as effectively and as well as possible without you damaging your back. So, Steven,
my back is sadly already damaged. I have what we call a nurse's back.
Right. So, well, let's see if we can sort that out a little bit. So, if you'd like to send us a photograph of how you currently work and how you deliver your Zooms or other online
calls,
meetings, then Steven will happily send you some bits and pieces.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
So almost take a picture from where you are and show us exactly what it looks like, and we'll sort you out. And then send us one back when it's all set up. It really
do send us one back.
Thank you. I really, because I like to use my space well. And obviously I have my mannequins and all the rest of it. So no, that would be great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, we've never had a photo with mannequins in it. So if we can have a photo with mannequins in it.
There you go. I've trained in a lot of different places. So I almost was getting to the stage where I was going to put a warning sign on the door, caution mannequin in situ, because people walk in and go,
I need to get myself a mannequin, because whenever I go for a blood test, it normally takes 2 nurses and about 6 hours to get any blood out of me. But if I had a mannequin, I could just let them do it with them. And I could just avoid it.
To be fair, I don't think the objective wouldn't be met if they had the mannequin, because
it meet my objective of not being.
I get it.
Times, but
fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, there you go. Training on how to take blood. I'm available.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
if you
do
want
you
to
want to do
practice
it yourself?
on someone,
Do
sorry.
you want to take your own blood? Is that what you mean?
No, I don't want to take my own blood, but if someone wants to practice on someone that's absolutely dreadful at getting blood out of,
He's the
Oh,
man.
excellent. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But we don't practice on people. We do just practice on mannequins, sadly.
There we
Not
go.
sadly, but obviously you can't do that. So there you go.
There we go, folks. I hope you've enjoyed that. It's been another great conversation. See that we've had quite a good lot of people watching today.
Yeah.
Nobody's commented, but that's probably because you've just been so interesting, Olivia.
That's very
and
kind of you.
they're still trying to find out where they get that Russian drink. But it's not a drink. It's not a drink.
It's really not a drink. It's an exam that actually doctors do as well. It's not just nurses. We don't own whiskey. So
there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we've got to evacuate. The alarm's going off.
It is.
It's time. We will see you soon for another Wow Ergonomics. We'll be back same time, same place next week. If you want to check out previous episodes, you can do now with the new back at Elkheisen logo at wowergonomics.com. Until then, bye for now.
Bye.